So good morning, Year 8. I hope you're well. We are nearly there with our lockdown and should be back to school soon, so just hold on. I've been really impressed with your engagement and hard work, so a big well done for that as well. So this is your second history online learning lesson. And similarly to last video, I just want to start with the 5 steps of successful study before we begin. So number 1, find somewhere quiet to watch this video. Number 2, sit at a desk or a table. Number 3, turn off all distractions if you can. Number 4, have a pen and either your old history exercise book or some lined paper to hand. And number 5, remember you can always pause this video and repeat it whenever you need. So our second lesson looks at the question, how did the Malian Empire become so wealthy? So please pause the video now and just write down the title and date in your exercise book or paper. So can you remember where the Malian Empire is in Africa and what the famous city was called? Pause the video now and have a think. So Mali is a current-day city that exists in West Africa and has an old and famous city called Timbuktu that we will talk about more moving forward. However, first I'm going to tell you a story of ancient wars and battles in these West African kingdoms that led to the creation of the Great Mali Empire. So West Africa had been dominated by the Empire of Ghana up until it was attacked by Islamic forces from the north in 1076 and was weakened so much that it fell apart by the end of the 1100s. So we can see the Empire of Ghana here. And we also know in 1076, this was 10 years after a big event that we studied last year, the Battle of Hastings. So this is a similar time period in a different part of the world. Subsequently, tribes and small kings rose up to rule different areas. One of these groups was called the Mandinka people. They lived in modern southern Mali. The Mandinkas had their own kings. They were the Keita family. Their enemies were the Soso people. So the Soso people attacked the Mandinka people again in the 1230s. Sundiata, the son of the previous king who was living in exile in Mima, heard about this from the king of Mima and believed he would be a liberator to his people. He believed he would free his people. Sundiata led the army of the king of Mima and went about the different tribes and people collecting an alliance of people who would fight for him. So he went around creating this big army. Around the year of 1235, Sundiata Keita's forces crushed the Soso's people at the Battle of Karina, and the people who fought for Sundiata accepted him as their Mansa. Mansa means emperor. And this is important because we talk about another Mansa soon. So Mansa Sundiata, Emperor Sundiata, became the ruler of the Mali Empire. It would be an empire that would be greater than the old Ghana Empire and accepted all religions, trades and beliefs. It accepted everyone. The Susu leader who fled the Battle of Karina left without his royal balafon, which is a musical instrument like a piano, a ceremonial xylophone, so again this is a different musical instrument, and a 4-stringed kora, which is like a guitar, which became cultural icons for the new empire. Mansa Sundiata knew that if an empire of different people, cultures, beliefs and identities was to be successful, then the people needed common identities. They needed to have one thing that they shared in common. The narrative of Mali, so the story of Mali, was the best way for the Mansa to control the present, because he who controls the past controls the present. Under Sundiata and those who followed him, Mali expanded rapidly west to the Atlantic Ocean, south deep into the forest, east beyond the Niger River and north to the salt and copper mines of the Sahara. In 1312, his last direct descendant, Abu Bakr, sailed across the Atlantic never to return. Abu Bakr left his deputy in charge, Musa Keita. He became the Mansa in 1312 until 1337. So we can see here the borders of the Malian Empire, a huge, huge place. So my first task for you today is question 1. It says that now we have read the story of how Mali became an empire in the 13th century, we as historians need to be able to write our own narrative, our own story of the past. We need to pick out the 5 most important parts of the story that we have just read and include them in our own version of how Mali became an empire. So pause the video now and rewind the story. Have a reread of the narrative and pick out 5 of the most important parts. I then want you to use these 5 events to fill in this flowchart here. For example, for me, the first most important event was the attack and destruction of the Empire of Ghana in the 1100s. So I would write this in point 1. I would write point 1, the Empire of Ghana was attacked and fell apart in the 1100s. This led to, and I want you to think as to what it led to. So pause the video now and rewind and find your 5 most important events. When you have done this, can you draw an image for each event to help you remember them? Pause the video now and have a go. Your next task is a quick fire quiz to check your knowledge and understanding so far. So in your exercise book or on your paper, I want you to try and answer these 7 questions in maybe 70 seconds, 10 seconds for each question. Have a go now, and if there are any unsure of, you can rewind at the end to find the answers. So 70 seconds, go. Your next task is an investigative one. So using this map here, I want you to try and work out what made Mali so wealthy. Have a look at the map, have a look at these indicators and where they sit in relation to the border of Mali. And just write down what you think was the reason Mali became so wealthy. So have a pause now and have a look at the image. Historian Casely Hayford, who we looked at last lesson, wrote this next passage in his book, which I will read for you. As I read, I want you to think about the Malians, what the Malians traded and received in return that made them so prosperous. So what they traded with other people and what they received in return. Paragraph is called The Desert Trade in the Mali Empire. It was trade that drove and dynamized, which gives power to, the region that kept the great networks across the Sahara open. So we know the Sahara Desert. There were 4 main routes across the Sahara Desert that would carry goods like salt southwards and return with gold. The most important was the 2-month camel journey from Slijamasa, one of the great Maghreb cities, to the West African frontier towns suspended on the edge of the desert, held there by the seasonal generosity of the flooding of the river Niger. It was towns like Timbuktu, which we can see just here, on or just beyond the fringes of the empire that became vital ports for the salt-laden caravans travelling southward, and the returning gold that they supplied became so critical to the economies of the whole of North Africa, Europe, and the Levant. The Levant is in the Middle East. These trading terminuses, which is like a transport route, grew steadily in population and importance. So this is basically saying Timbuktu is on the edge of the Mali Empire and was a vital trading post, and as it became more important, it grew in size. So now that I have done this, looking at the flow diagram just here, this flow diagram here, I would like you to pause the video and write it out and fill it in your exercise book or paper. Remember, if you are unsure, you can rewind and re-listen to the passage above. So pause the video now. Now have a look at question 4a, b, c, and d. I would like you to answer these questions in full sentences in your exercise book or lined paper, using what we have just learnt. Give yourself 4 minutes to do this, and remember you can rewind and re-listen to the passage above. So why was trade important for sub-Saharan Africa? What 2 items were traded across the Sahara? Why was Timbuktu important in this trade? And which places benefited from the trade across the Sahara? And finally, our final question today is a how far do you agree question. Now that we have learnt a bit more about Mali, how far do you agree with this statement? The geography of Mali with the river Niger was the main factor in developing Mali's wealth. So what it is saying is that the river Niger was one of the main factors in helping Mali become prosperous as an empire. Pause the video now for 30 seconds and have a think about this question. Go. Where do you sit? Do you think Mali became rich and strong because of the great river Niger that gave life to its region? Or do you think it was because of the gold fields that it sat on and that allowed it to trade with the north? Or finally, do you think it was because of the great leader Mansa Sudiata and his forward way of thinking? So I would like you to write at least 5 lines on this question using evidence from today's lesson. Remember, you can rewind to any stage to find information to support your view, but I would like you to come to a decision as to your opinion. Pause the video now and have a go at this. Give yourself 5 minutes. When you have done that, you have finished your second lesson. I have created a quiz on Teams that goes after this lesson, which you must complete, so please do this now. It will only take 1 minute, but it allows me to see how you are finding the work and who is completing it. After you have done that, you are finished. Have a lovely evening and well done for your hard work. Mr. Tuton.